This month, the Pittsburgh Opera is presenting its first ever performances of Haydn's spellbinding Aramida. It's a tale all about whether to chase love or follow your duty. The Prince of Darkness sends the enchantress Aramida to seduce and destroy the heroic knight Rinaldo. But as they fall in love with each other, both need to decide between obeying their orders or going with their hearts. Plus, there's a revenge plot to make things extra exciting. Fall into Aramida's clutches from January 25th through February 2nd. That's Pittsburgh Opera. Where can we take you? Learn more at pittsburghopera.org/citycast. CityCast Pittsburgh is supported by Fulton Commons. If you're looking for a gorgeous co-working space with lots of light and some truly wonderfully funky decor, check out Fulton Commons on the north side. The historic but very well renovated old school building is deep in the neighborhood by a park, tucked away but still super close to anywhere you want to be. They've got offices and common spaces. It's perfect for organizations or individuals, and they even have a shared food production kitchen on site. So there's lots of food-related events for their members. If this sounds like your dream co-working space, visit fultonpgh.org to request a tour. Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, it's freezing outside and snowy and slushy and in waves also occasionally icy. So we got to wondering how often Pittsburgh actually deals with this kind of winter weather, when by the numbers, it's genuinely been bad enough to break records or shut down the city. Today on the show, we're talking about the worst snowstorms and cold snaps in Pittsburgh history and how we started measuring all this stuff in the first place. It's Tuesday, January 21st. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. We've been getting a bunch of snow this winter. I feel like it's like nature trying to make up for the really mild winters we've had these last couple of years. So senior newsletter editor and lifelong Pittsburgher, Francesca DeBecco, and I thought it would be fun to look back at some of our worst cold weather moments in recorded Pittsburgh history.
Hey, Megan, thanks for getting nostalgic with me. This stuff really puts it into perspective. Like when we're complaining about what's happening with the cold temps and the snow, we can just kind of humble ourselves with
honestly
what has happened in the past.
Yeah, like when, you're struggling with the 1 or 2 inches at a time that we've been getting over the past few weeks, this puts it into perspective. So fun fact, the data we pulled actually goes back over 150 years.
Pretty impressive.
Honestly. So a teeny Pittsburgh history lesson. Our city was among the very first of the National Weather Service stations, like the official ones.
That's so cool. Pittsburgh loves being first in stuff. I really didn't know about this, so thanks for sharing this.
I didn't either. We found temperature tables with the National Weather Service, and they went back to 1871, and I was like, how? How is this possible? But it turns out Pittsburgh was one of the first. We were a pioneer in this. So in 1870, Congress authorized the Secretary of War to make meteorological observations at military stations. It was assigned initially to the U.S. Army Signal Office or Signal Corps, and the very first temperature reading ever officially recorded in Pittsburgh was November 1st, 1870. Someone took this observation from a window shelter on Fifth Avenue in downtown, and folks kept doing it downtown for decades. Eventually, we got more modern stations in the 30s out at the airports and elsewhere.
We need a marker there at that spot
right?
downtown.
It didn't say what building. I really want to know.
Yeah. And now that main station is out in Coriopolis. That's just west of the Ohio, sort of between the river and the airport.
Mm-hmm. And if you check out all of that data, January is by far our coldest month here in the city. Our official tourism group, Visit Pittsburgh, says our average high in January is 39 degrees. Definitely is not that for most of this month this year. But the average low is around 23 degrees.
Yeah, and January is also usually our snowiest month. We've all been living in that reality for a couple of weeks now.
As we're recording this, the National Weather Service says parts of our region have gotten up to 11.8 inches of snow. That's just so far this year.
But a lot of other years we've had massive snowstorms or long cold snaps. So we thought we'd, talk about a few of those. You can also read about these on our website. That's pittsburgh.citycast.fm.
So let's start with the quote unquote big snow of 1950, aka the Great Appalachian Storm. Southwestern Pennsylvania got 27 inches of snow. It was over a couple of days, November 24th to 26th. So right after Thanksgiving that year. That is so early for snow, let alone snow of that caliber.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that in our Novembers now. I remember my grandma talking about this big storm around Thanksgiving, and I wish I could ask her about it now. Unfortunately, there were some pretty tragic stories across Appalachia.
Yeah. So we'll jump ahead a couple of decades. Our coldest overall winter ever was the winter between 1976 and 1977. The average temps at the time were 20 degrees or so. Oof. January 1977 actually had an average of 11.4 degrees for the entire month.
Oh, no.
It's so cold. Like, just thinking about that.
I would not be going out.
Oh, it's so upsetting. Pittsburgh Magazine reports that we had a colder summer that year as well. The average temp that year was 67 degrees.
Oh.
So, it didn't even get better later on.
Oh, my. Actually, I can get behind 67 degrees. I love that. Maybe not for all summer, but I love that weather in Pittsburgh.
I mean, I do too, but I don't want it in July and August.
That feels really unnatural. So let's move on to the most snow Pittsburgh's ever seen in one day. That was 23.6 inches. That happened March 13th, 1993. The real ones will remember. That was about 3 inches per hour.
I mean, I can't fathom what that must have looked like up here. I actually did experience this when the storm system was so enormous that it hit my hometown too. It was up here in Pittsburgh and also down where we were. But it hit us as sleet and ice. Oof. So it was a very different experience than the massive amount of snow Pittsburgh received.
Yeah, major highways were shut down, flights were canceled or delayed, and in true Pittsburgh fashion, the St. Patrick's Day Parade still happened.
Yep.
I cannot believe this.
I can. We are belligerent about our St. Patrick's Day Parade.
Actually, you're right. And I was looking back at some reports, and 117 marching bands and groups still showed up that day. So they had about 70 cancel. Most of those were schools, marching bands with schools and stuff.
I mean, the kids were so short, they would have gotten swallowed by the snow.
I know. And they, in these reports, they were talking about how, this begs the question, who's responsible for canceling these types of events? Is it the city? Is it the organizers? But they were not letting up. And so they had to do a lot of work to, make that day still go on.
I've actually seen photos of the St. Patrick's Day Parade from that year. They're really funny, just people trudging through, dead committed anyway.
And I guess, they love their drinking on St. Patrick's Day, so they warm up that way.
Yeah, you got to stay warm somehow, right? Today's show is sponsored by the Frick Pittsburgh Museum and Gardens and a new award-winning tour of their historic home, Clayton. It's called Gilded, Not Golden, and it's a new spin on the old Frick family stories. Yes, you're going to learn about the mansion and Pittsburgh's Millionaires Row, but this tour is not about oohing and eyeing over the possessions of a man who famously, notoriously, played a very big role in the Homestead riots and the birth of the entire American labor movement. It gives you more, the complexities of the man, his wealth, and exactly where it came from. If you've taken a Clayton tour before, it is time to return. So tour facilitators can take you back to 1892, the year of the riots, the year someone tried to kill Henry Clay Frick, and the year he mourned the loss of 2 of his children. Plus more on his corporate legacy, wealth inequality, and Frick's lasting impact on our environment. History is complicated, and that's what the Frick wants to share with you. The Frick's new signature tour of Clayton, Gilded, Not Golden, is now open for the season. Get your tickets and learn more at thefrickpittsburgh.org. Pitt men's basketball is back this season with a great deal for families to enjoy Panthers game days together. The Family 4-Pack offers you 4 tickets to a game plus a $40 concessions voucher for only $125. That's like $30 a ticket, and then you get that free $40 concessions voucher to treat the entire family. The offer is available right now for the upcoming Pitt, Virginia game. That's on Monday, February 3rd at 7 p.m. at the Peterson Events Center in Oakland. My real ones know how much I love basketball, and Pitt men are killing it right now, y'all. They are near the top of the ACC standings with a fantastic record, and they're playing especially well at home, so you're going to get a good show. Don't miss out on seeing your Pitt Panthers in action this season with the Family 4-Pack deal. Family 4-Packs for the Pitt, Virginia game are on sale now at pittsburghpanthers.com/family4pack. That's family number 4-pack.
It's the Smucker's Uncrustables podcast with your host, Uncrustables.
Okay, today's guest is rough around the edges. Please welcome Crust.
Thanks for having me.
Today's topic, he's round with soft pillowy bread.
Hey.
Filled with delicious PB&J.
Are you talking about yourself?
And you can take him anywhere.
Why'd you invite?
And we are out of time.
Are you really cutting me off?
Uncrustables are the best part of the sandwich. Sorry, Crust.
And now for the coldest day of the year. Megan, want to guess how cold it's gotten here?
I mean, I know it's in the negatives, but I don't know how bad in the negatives it is.
Throw out a number.
Okay. Negative 17.
Oh, you're pretty close. So the coldest temperature on record in Pittsburgh was minus 22 degrees the year after the biggest snowfall. So this was 1994. And the high that day was negative 3 degrees. And maybe
this is not feels like, by the way. This is not like factoring in wind chill. This is just the normal temperature.
Yep. What was taken and recorded. And maybe what I think is the worst part is this, cold snap was a part of a 52-hour stretch of below zero temperatures.
It sounds terrible. Once again, the 94 one that hit Pittsburgh, I also felt in Tennessee. It's so funny that we have these memories of this storm, but like in radically different places. It's just like how the cold fronts move across the country. It's so funny.
Yeah, it was so cold then that the governor at the time, Robert Casey, Bob Casey's dad, declared a state of emergency, and he encouraged workers to go home. But I got a little anecdote. My dad couldn't go home. He was working at Three River Stadium at the time, and he tells stories about how his job was to watch all of the pipes to make sure that they didn't burst.
Like just to sit there in a lawn chair and stare at them?
I think that he had to really go around the building and monitor things.
I mean, I don't know where pipes are.
I don't know.
In Three River Stadium, God rest its soul.
I know, R.I.P. But he says the river was completely frozen, locked in ice, and that there were these sort of mountains of ice chunks on the riverbanks. They kind of looked like mini glaciers. Mm-hmm. And when it melted, there was a ton of cleanup. There was boats in places that they weren't supposed to be because they got moved around. My dad said that they had to cut one lane in the ice for traffic. So, the barges and everything could still move through. I have a hard time conceptualizing what that looked like. But apparently there was such a demand for electricity during this cold snap that utilities did these rolling blackouts. So they kind of prevented the grid from shutting down completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've seen some of that ice cutting in action because it's nothing as bad as it was in 1994. But just in the time that I've lived here in the city, I've watched them have to do that before when the river gets too frozen for the barges and the river traffic to go through. And your dad's right. The cleanup is really terrible. We think the roads get gross and slushy. Our riverbanks really needed love after that.
Yeah, for sure.
The next one we'll move to is Snowmageddon. So this was in 2010. Pittsburgh got just under 22 inches of snow.
Oof. Yeah, I do remember this one. This was back when you had to watch the local news to see if your school canceled.
Did school get canceled?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I remember it getting canceled kind of well into the week. I don't remember how many days, but I definitely spent multiple days of my PJs. But hey, guys, if you prefer spending your snow days outside, you should definitely go check out our website because we did a whole podcast about winter activities around our area. So skiing, snow tubing, all that good stuff, because we are inevitably going to have another snow day this year.
Oh, yeah, many. This 2010 one, though, again, before my time, but I do remember hearing all about it because it sent the entire city press corps into such a tizzy. The mayor at the time, Luke Ravenstall, was famously not here for this snowstorm. It happened to coincide with his 30th birthday, which he had decided to spend in Seven Springs.
Dude.
So we're having all of this like municipal meltdown situation with all the snow, and Mayor Ravenstall was not seen in public until several days after the storm had passed. And he was, as you might expect, pretty heavily criticized for the whole thing.
I also remember hearing stories about this, and I just think it's funny that you said, the city was in a meltdown amid the snowstorm.
It was icy,
No, but yeah, he definitely did not live that down and rightfully criticized, I think, for escaping the city during that.
It doesn't do any politician any favors to not be at home when disaster strikes. Last one, and the only one that I lived here for, was the January 2014 polar vortex. It's the most absurd name. Below zero weather hit -7 and -9. That was January 6th and 7th. The weather folks at the time said you could get frostbite in a matter of seconds outside. But my friends and I were complete idiots. So we went up to the Mount Washington overlooks just to test it. Like we wanted somewhere where you're like exposed, but you could jump back in the car really quickly. The thing I remember so viscerally was like stepping outside and literally in seconds, the nose hairs inside your nose freezing and like your eyelashes freezing like so quickly. It was wild.
Oh, that sounds miserable.
We just wanted to test it. We ran right back inside.
A science project.
Actually, it was so cold that year. That was the same time that Peduto was supposed to be inaugurated, our former mayor, Bill Peduto, and he had to move his whole celebration indoors.
Yeah,
but he was in town. So
for that, yeah.
Yeah. And who knows what today will bring, right? Like as we're recording this, the weather apps have us in the negatives today too. We're seeing headlines about a polar vortex moving across most of the country. So bundle up if you're outside, if you've got to be out there. If not, I hope you are cozy and inside and don't have to be stuck in the thick of all of this.
Yeah. Stay warm, folks.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Reminder, you can find all of this and so much more goodness on our website. That's pittsburgh.citycast.fm. And if you haven't, make sure you're subscribed to our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon.
The governor at the time, Robert Casey, that sounds so weird to say, sorry.
I mean, you can say Bob Casey's dad.